Hello, and welcome back to the Tea and Soju C Drama Podcast, your safe spot for C Drama chatter. I'm your host, Liliana, and it's time to sit back, grab your tea, and let's chat Asian dramas. In today's episode, it's a celebration episode because Tea and Soju turns 2 years old. So, before we get into that, just some housekeeping. If you like the podcast, please like, share, and subscribe on the platform you listen to. That really helps the podcast reach other listeners. For more content, check out Patreon, where you can find behind the scenes, first impressions, movie reviews, and more. I would like to thank my patrons are Purple Dinosaurus, Marta, Souza, Caitlin, Lorna, Cheryl, Julia, Nancy, Grace, Amanda, Jane, Camilla, Cindy, Victoria, Tate, Valerie, and Catherine. Thank you guys so much for being part of the Patreon family over there. And also, if you're just a free member on there, thank you as well. So, finally, if you would like to chat to me or find a community, check out Discord, Instagram, and other socials. The link is in the episode notes. So, today's a very special episode. I cannot believe that Tea and Soju is turning 2. It feels like it was just yesterday that, I was pressing play to record my first ever episode, and it was months before I released it because I was fine tuning it and I was kind of nervous actually about it all in general. And then I was just like, "Do you know what? What the heck? We're just gonna do it." And I have never looked back ever since. And I will be very, very honest. So recently, I feel like for the past year, I have been season 2 started in October 2023. And since October 2023, I have not missed a single week of an episode. There has been an episode every single week. And that means that there's been almost 50 episodes in season 3, which is a bit wild to me. We're almost as well at our 100th episode. It won't quite make it in season 3, in season 2, but season 3 will be the 100th episode, 40 and Soju, which is also just crazy. And I was actually chatting to Jess and Caitlin, and I was saying, "Do you know what, guys? I think I'm a little burnt out." But then I realized that it's 2 years, and I can't believe that I'm still doing this. This is probably my longest devoted thing that I have done, because I've always said doing a podcast is something that is kind of a labor of love. It can be a lot of work. It really truly can. And I don't think sometimes it's hard to convey quite how much it can go into, writing all the notes, finding all the things, and then putting everything together, and then sitting down, recording, editing, uploading, creating all the, not promotion, but all the things that go with the episode. So all the Instagram posts and TikTok posts and all of that. And I think I've been churning out content for, almost a year constantly. And I will say I will be taking a little break in September, so there will be no new episodes at all come September. We will be back in October, and I hope you guys are excited because there's some really good. I'm actually getting excited for season 3, which I haven't been in the tail end of season 2, just because not only are we seeming to have this rough patch in Asian drama land in general, it feels like there's not a lot of good dramas out there. But in general, I just feel a little bit burnt out and a little tired, and it makes me question everything when that happens. So, also, just to tie it in today's episode, that is the perfect tie in, and it's the perfect way. So basically, in today's episode, I am just gonna be going through your guys' stories into Asian drama land. I put out a request on Instagram and a couple of other socials, and I sort of said, "Tell me your story, to celebrate Tea and Soju turning 2. I want to hear from listeners." So that's what we're going to be doing today. So for me, I don't know, it's been a while, I think, since I've told my story. At least on Tea and Soju, I think I did it in the beginning in the very first episode. So I will reiterate how I found Asian dramas. So to me, like I said, I have always been a fantasy girly. I have always loved everything fantasy. And that's what I predominantly watched for a really long time, American shows specifically. And then I met my partner, and before I had met him, of course, I had watched a couple of things like Sailor Moon and things like that, and that was probably my very first introduction. But I watched it back in Portugal, and because those are still aimed a little bit at a younger audience, they would be dubbed in Portuguese. Although that's, rare now, but those type of things that are aimed at younger kids, they will be dubbed. Everything else isn't. So that was kind of like my foray first, but obviously I didn't connect it because it was dubbed in Portuguese at the time when I was watching it. So when then I met my partner, he has always watched a lot of anime, and he really got me into anime. So I watched a lot of things, while I was with him, things like Bleach and Fairy Tail and just a bunch of others, and One Piece, obviously, always One Piece. So he kind of got me into anime, and I was watching anime. I remember this was 2018, December 2018. I had watched a bunch of anime over on Netflix, and all of a sudden, Netflix kind of churns out this recommendation of Ashes of Love, the Chinese drama Ashes of Love. And basically, I sort of looked at it and I just thought, I don't know what made me press, but I'm like, this kind of looks interesting. The poster looks interesting. And I was just finishing up an anime. I didn't really have anything else to watch because I'd been caught up on everything else. And I something just made me press play. So I did. I pressed play. 3 days later, I had binged the 63 episodes and I was a goner. And when I tell you, although I started watching in December 2018 with Ashes of Love, I don't think I pressed play on another drama another Asian drama for at least another 4 months. I was so in the world of Ashes of Love. I rewatched episodes over and over again, and there's just something special about it. It was fantasy. It was this epic romantic story, and I was just all consumed by it. And that's kind of like how I got into Asian dramas. And then because I had watched one, the next one Netflix churned out for me was Love 020, which in hindsight is not a great show. Not a great show at all. But at the time, I was so enamored by everything that you guys know that feeling when you first discover Asian dramas and everything just feels so good, even though not everything necessarily is. You kind of have these rose tinted glasses on. So that's how I was. And then after Love 020, I went on to watch Strong Girl Bong Soon, and that is it. That was it. I was in the cutest couple I had ever seen, and I was like, again, in hindsight, this story is not great. It has a lot of faux pas in it, but that main couple sealed it for me. Park Bo Young and Park Hyung Sik. Oh my goodness, you cannot argue that they are the freaking cutest couple. So that kind of then set me onto the path of Korean dramas as well. And for a little while, I was watching way more Korean dramas than I was Chinese dramas. And then I rediscovered Chinese dramas all over again, and I have been hooked on them ever since. And like I said, I've been a little bit disconnected with Korean dramas, but I do still watch them. But I feel like there's so many podcasts and everything out there that talk about Korean dramas that I really wanted Tea and Soju to focus on Chinese dramas and how good they can be, and to go behind the stereotypical of Chinese dramas and to show that there's really good ones out there. And if you just want to try them, that a whole new world can open up for you. And that was like one of my biggest reasons to, talk about Chinese dramas, is the fact that I truly loved them I do still love them, even though 2024 has been not a great year, but I do still love them. And yeah, that's how kind of everything came into being. So that's my journey. So I'm very excited. Let's get into these stories. I have quite a few to get through, and again, thank you everybody who sent them in to me. I really truly appreciated that you would take the time to share your story with me. So the first one up is from Yen, and they said, "This will be a fun episode. I first started watching Asian dramas with my parents when I was a teenager. It was Taiwanese at first and then some Chinese dramas afterwards. It was way back then when it was on VCR, and we would rent like 50 tapes and they would be translated into Vietnamese. I think watching those even helped my Vietnamese. Me and my mum would stay up late and watch them. We watched some historical modern solving cases. I remember my favorite actress was Ruby Lin. I even had a big poster of her on my wall, and then I stopped watching just because I had school and activities that kept me busy, and also because I was watching American shows. I started watching Asian dramas again in 2022 with Korean first Squid Game and Alchemy of Souls, since it was so popular on Netflix. And then last year I was watching the movies The Yin Yang Master and loved it. Then I found Hidden Loved and Love Between Fairy and Devil and was hooked on Chinese dramas since then. So that is my story. See, this is why I kind of love hearing from listeners. This is such a wholesome story. The fact that you would watch these with your mum, and I love, because I've heard this from a couple of people where they would still watch from the time that you would have to get like your VCR tapes and everything. And I just find that whole fascinating, because to me, obviously, I know, I used to watch VCR tapes and all of that, but never for Asian dramas. For me, when I came into Asian dramas, they were already very readily available, nowhere near as much as they are now, but very readily available on Netflix and on Viki and things like that. So I don't know what it is to be looking for 5-minute clips. So that's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Yen. So next up is Volkswin Song, and her story goes, my first intro to Asian dramas was back in September 2021. I had been scrolling on Netflix, and this weird Korean drama just came out that had an interesting title and had these people in red red bodysuits with masks. Previously, I had seen a few Korean movies like Parasite, so I was a little familiar with Korean films. I had no idea what I was getting into when I clicked play on Squid Game. What hooked me from the start were the characters, stories, not the blood and gore. It was an incredibly human story and social commentary on human society. On top of that, I spotted the most handsome man that I had ever seen before in it, Gong Yu. I had no idea who he was before this, and he had such a small role in Squid Game that I had to look him up. After that, I wanted to watch more and more Korean dramas because the stories were unique and I got tired of Western television. I never streamed much of anything and still had cable TV before this. My brother mentioned a K drama called Crash Landing on You years before, but I didn't think I'd want to watch. So after Squid Game, I wanted to try it, and the rest is history. I binged Chloe in 2 days and stayed up past midnight watching it, which I've never done before. There was never anything I had to see what happened next like this. So I love this. Like that feeling that you get from discovering your first, dramas, and it's such a unique feeling. And I think that drama will always remain special to you no matter, what comes down the line. And I totally agree. I love that feeling of, oh my goodness, it's past midnight or it's really, really late and I'm still watching and I can't fathom going to sleep right now because I really want to keep watching. So, I totally get that. Thank you so much for sharing. So next up we have Fatima, and they say, "Hi Liliana, I'd come across Asian dramas on Netflix, but never really hit play until October 2022, when a rom-com listicle mentioned Business Proposal. It was hilarious, and I ended up binging it." Just as an aside, this is me saying it. I love Business Proposal. It's such a good intro drama. It was hilarious, and I ended up binging it. My next drama was Hometown Cha Cha Cha, and I liked it so much I knew I was a goner. It's been close to 2 years, and except for a few standouts, Western shows have mostly taken a back seat. I love the tropiness of Asian dramas, the lists I end up making, the podcast debriefs, and the exposure to cultures that are quite foreign to me. This year, I even started learning Korean at a local expat school for fun. It's been a journey, and long may it continue. I love that for you. I hope your Korean learning journey goes well. I did actually start learning Korean. So like I mentioned, for a little while, I really did just watch Korean dramas. I didn't really touch Chinese dramas. And that's when I started learning Korean. But then I just did not have the time the time was short. And when I started really, really getting into it, and because of the podcast, I switched to Mandarin. Goodness knows it takes dedication, but I hope your studies go well. Thank you so much for sharing. So, next up, we have Laura. Hello, my drama story is I've always been interested in Asian culture, the food, the traditions, etc. I work as a music teacher, and at certain times of the year, we get super busy and work is pretty stressful. Around about exam deadline time. In March this year, I'd opened Netflix to look for something to watch one night but couldn't focus to make a decision. Eventually, I'd left it on so long that the show I was hovering on had started playing. You know how Netflix does that sometimes. It was a Midday Snowstorm of Love. Guys, you know my love for a Midday Snowstorm of Love is wild. And can I just say, what a Chinese drama to start on. I was so exhausted I didn't stop it, and before long was totally engaged in watching it. It became unputdownable, or however you'd phrase that for a TV show. And I think I watched it all by the end of the week. That was March this year, and since then I've been unable to stop. I've watched a ridiculous amount and now have also invested in a few subscriptions. I love the slow burn of the stories, how they give you just enough payoff to keep you watching right till the end. I also think watching something with subtitles helps me to quiet my stressed overthinking mind, as you sort of need to concentrate on the words. You can't phone it in. I also love the expressiveness of Mandarin and the tonal quality the language has, starting to be able to identify some common C dramas tropes too, which rather than finding predictable, I actually find super comforting. Not to mention the very handsome male leads and some female leads with real gumption, particularly in dramas made from 2018 onwards. Zhao Lushi, Bai Lu spring to mind. They seem to choose interesting female characters with a bit more about them. You guys know I'm, Bai Lu's number one fan over here, but also I love Zhao Lushi. They are two of my top actresses as well. And so then it goes on. I like the sweet, fairly chaste romances, all the political stuff, and loving the period ones too. I feel like I've unlocked a whole new world, and I'm so glad. It's like reading an amazing book and then finding out the author has written hundreds. To find community with it in this podcast has been great too, and as I don't really know anyone who watches them, that is so sweet. Like that warms my heart because honestly, like I said, I was having a little bit of a doubtful time. I literally just think I'm overworked and tired and a little bit burned out. But as soon as these stories started coming in, and a lot of you guys mention that, not only that you enjoy listening to the podcast, but you pop into Discord or, you chat to me on Instagram and you found this community. And then it kind of reminds me of why I'm doing it. Not only because I love chatting and watching Asian dramas, but I love the people that I find through these shows. Not only culture that I discover and things that I learn, but the people that come with, the community that you find. And I think that's one of the most special things about watching Asian dramas is literally the community that you find. So I'm really glad Laura has found that. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Laura. So Mina is up next, and she says, "Hey Liliana, I saw your message on Discord about our drama stories. Mine's not super interesting, but it's a little funny." And I will say, it's not just a little funny, it's very funny. I very much enjoyed Mina's story. And she says, "So I started watching K dramas back in 2014. I joined a new school for sixth form, which was a bit far, so I'd take a bus. One day I overheard some girls talking about Pinocchio, and I was very confused because A, interesting topic of conversation, but heck, who am I to judge? And B, this was an insane retelling of a classic tale. Anyway, I ended up chatting with them and learned all about the world of K dramas. They recommended Vicky, and the rest was history. I pretty much exclusively watched K dramas for many years until late 2022. I came across a completely out of context clip on TikTok of Love Between Fairy and Devil, and I was like, I must watch this right now. Ended up watching it and was hooked on C dramas. I feel like basically Love Between Fairy and Devil and Hidden Love brought a whole new wave of watchers to Chinese dramas, and since then there's been so many more people that have kind of like tiptoed into Chinese drama land. And I, for one, I'm very, very happy. I just found Mina's story so interesting because it was like she had to be there at the right time, if that makes sense. For it, sometimes K dramas or Asian dramas just find you. You don't find them, they find you. And I feel like that was Mina's story. Also, she mentioned sixth form, guys. If you don't know what sixth form is in the UK, sixth form is basically like the 2 years before we go to university. So we have like so we call it, basically it goes high school, sixth form, university, which is like your college. So that's basically what it is. This is very funny. Thank you so much for sharing, Nina. So next up we have Ariane. And she says, following your last story post, how this completely unexpected addiction, let's call it a spade, started. Well, guys, we're all friends here. We all know that, it's an addiction that we all help each other feed. That could be much worse. So she says, beginning September 2022, I was experiencing a major slump on Netflix. Despite an endless list of series and movies on my watch list, nothing was tempting me. Oh my goodness, guys, I just have to say an aside, isn't that the worst time to be in? When you have like lots to watch, but nothing is calling to you. Anyway, a few weeks prior, a friend had recommended a South Korean drama called Crash Landing on You. I wasn't really convinced. I was so used to Western shows, but knowing her excellent taste, I added that title onto my watch list and just left it there. At that time, I confess, I wasn't really aware of the existence of Asian TV shows. I know, let alone that they were so many and that they were named dramas. Pretty soon, Netflix began to suggest other South Korean dramas titles, and my curiosity finally got the better of me. The first series I clicked on was Business Proposal. I don't remember why I chose that one in particular, but what a cultural shock it was, to be honest. I was still a little skeptical after that first watch, but I was definitely intrigued, to say the least. I then saw the now classic Crash Landing on You, and down the rabbit hole I went. By the way, Business Proposal is to this date still the only Korean drama I rewatched. I absolutely had to reevaluate that first watch a few months and many dramas later. As a newbie, I quickly realized how late I was in the game. After just a few months, I already had way too many K dramas on my never ending watch list. So I made a promise to myself to never, ever watch other Asian countries' dramas or films. That would be completely insane, right? Well, less than 6 months later, that promise went down the drain. Why am I not surprised? As I watched my very first Chinese drama, Lesson in Love. Don't ask me why I chose that one, but I was hooked. By the way, in this case too, Lesson in Love is the only C drama I rewatched to this date. Soon after, I subscribed to other streaming platforms. I enjoy having access to such a large selection of Asian shows, even though I get so conflicted when selecting a new drama to start. Same. I'm just going to introduce this here. Same. And discovered MDL, fantastic podcasts and amazing related communities. At the moment, around 40% of all the dramas and films I'm watching are still Korean. The rest is about 30% Chinese, 15% Taiwanese, 10% Thai, and 5% Japanese. I like all genres, but I'm not a fan of horror because I'm a chicken. I'm not a fan of horror either. Like, I will watch anything but put a horror on, and I'm like, I'm not sure. So I get that. I totally get that. Nor particularly interested in anime. I love a good smart Nuna romance, and I'm definitely a a slow burn aficionado. My favorite tropes are hidden mistaken identity and enemies to lovers. I'm more of a binger kind of watcher. That's one of the reasons I rarely start an airing show before all episodes are released. Also, the risk of forgetting what happens the week before is too great for me. It can be hard for me to drop a drama, probably because I'm still a newbie and I want to watch as much as possible. But I'm working on it slowly. Trust me, absolutely trust me on this, Ariane. We all go through this. We absolutely all go through this, thing where we don't want to drop anything and then give it a couple of years and you'll be ruthless. Like, I am ruthless with my dramas now. I drop. And to everybody that I've talked to, you know, that I've been watching for a little while, that slowly does change over time, I think. Not all the time. Some people do stay in the lane of I finish everything I start, but for the most part I think that does change over time. She then goes on to say, I rarely rewatch a show. It's not that I don't want to, but time is of the essence here, guys. Important note, fast forwarding, speed watching is a crime, obviously, and don't get me started on dubbing, a sacrilege, no less. Correction, I just realized Lesson in Love is not Chinese but Taiwanese. My bad. So in that case, my first C drama was the famous Hidden Love that I discovered a few months after Lesson in Love. So that was Ariane's story. Can I just say she wrote that beautifully? I think she wrote that very well. Like I said, dropping dramas does come with the territory eventually. I think you either, like I said, stay in the lane of you finish everything you start, or you don't. I the important note she put about fast forwarding. I don't really fast forward, but I do speed watch. And by speed watch, I mean I change the speed of the content that I'm consuming. So sometimes I'll watch like at 1.25 or a 1.5, and if I can still keep up with everything and everything they're saying, I'm not mad at it. Sometimes some shows just need that for me. And I do this with books as well. Like, I do a lot of audiobooks, and there's no way I can listen on one time speed. My speed for audiobooks has to be a 2 and above. Like, maybe my brain just works very quickly, and I don't know, guys, but that is what it is. Right. Thank you so much for sharing. So, next up is Lauren. Now, guys, Lauren is someone I know in real life. She's been a friend of mine for many, many, many years, which I think she mentions in her story, actually. So I sort of said to her, "You haven't submitted a story yet." And and this was a weekend we went down to London to watch Stray Kids together. So this is her story. Way back in 2011, I got into K-pop through SHINee. They did an OST for the very well-known, infamous drama named Boys Over Flowers, and it took me a couple of months, but I finally gave it a go. When I finished my exams, back then, there was no streaming, and my home internet was so bad that my only option was to download it using unorthodox means. I then ended up binging it all in less than 48 hours. And then I watched it again. It feels super cringe now that I loved it so much, but I was a teenager. After that, I tried a few more, and then over the next 8 years, I watched a handful of other K dramas. And I just have to pause this here because I technically knew Lauren in college, and I believe she was already into she already watched some, and I never knew. So I could have come into contact with this, and I never knew. But like I said, they find you when they find you. And then she goes on to say, then in 2019, I got back in contact with Liliana. She was a friend from our sixth form days. Funnily enough, the same time I got into K dramas. See what I mean? She got into them right about the time that we were both in sixth form together, but it just never, I think, came into conversation or anything like that. So yeah. Same time I got into K dramas in the first place. She slid into my DMs when she saw I'd like to post about BTS, and from there she talked about Asian dramas to me. At the time, I had just started watching The Unchained, still a favorite, but our conversation sparked a new interest and a passion for all things drama. From there, all of my watching became dramas. Predominantly, it was K drama, but now I'm a little less choosy and just watch whatever sounds interesting to me from wherever. Either way, Liliana brought out a love in me for something I had no idea would become such a favorite. It's been lovely seeing the podcast go from just an idea you were throwing around to something with such a supportive community and a place for you to share all your knowledge and opinions with people who are just as interested as you. See what I mean? I know, like, I've known Lauren for goodness, 14 years. I don't know. It's been a really long time, guys. We've known each other for a really long time. But after sixth form, I kind of moved away from the UK and I went to live back home for a little while to Portugal. And that's kind of like when we lost contact. And then when I moved back to the UK, and this is why I think BTS is also quite special to me, because like I said, we'd still stayed friends on Facebook. And she had liked something about BTS and it came up on my feed. And I sort of messaged her, and that's kind of like where it sparked. And I kid you not, it was, we would have whole sessions of conversations just to talk about dramas or whatever. And yes, I did talk her ear off. Guys, I have a podcast talking about dramas. I could talk for a while, but Lauren is so gracious and she's so ridiculously nice that she's always, just sort of listened to me and kind of then shared her opinions and, started watching more as well. So, and it's very funny because Lauren and I have very, 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 very different tastes you know, in dramas in general. She likes more, I think, crime and things like that. She's not very a romance type of drama. But like I said, it's been a joy to reconnect with her and, we hang out time permitting because life gets busy. So it's always very special. Not only to have connected through BTS, but just have a friend that you can sort of chat about, Asian dramas. And she has literally seen the podcast from the very, very beginning. We would go and have coffee and hang out, and I sort of spoke to her about the idea of making a podcast, and she was always so supportive and being like, yeah, you should go for it. And so she's been there from the very, very early days. So that's very special. Thank you, Lauren, for sending your message in. So next up we have Stardust. And they've written, so I'm not sure if you've already recorded your podcast, but here's my story. I haven't, and I'm recording it now. And they say, so I've watched Asian dramas on and off since I was a little kid. I remember watching those classic Cheong Yao dramas with the queen of Taiwanese dramas, Liu Shu Hua, with my grandma, and all the early TVB Jin Yong adaptations. Of course, back in the day, we'd get maybe 1 or 2 episodes a week, so one drama would take us months. And there would be those random J dramas I'd watch on TV sporadically. I suppose my most memorable drama was the OG Meteor Garden. It was freshman year in college. I was a long, long way from home and had never experienced a freezing cold Chicago winter before. So I was sick. a lot and terribly homesick. My two good friends lived in the same dorm, and one day my friend was telling us that she brought back the VCDs of this Taiwanese drama called Meteor Garden, and we should watch it together after dinner. So one evening, I trudged downstairs to their dorm room, and we started episode 1 of Shankai and Dao Ming's C's story. I can still remember how all three of us had never watched anything like that before. Mind you, Meteor Garden was the OG idol drama before all idol dramas. I think we were so mind blown that after every episode, time to change the disc, the three of us would look at each other and declare, let's watch it again. Clearly, in one night, we never made it too far, so we spent many sleepless nights watching Meteor Garden. I remember being so tired that I didn't even make it to my morning classes the next day. Don't tell my parents, please. We were obsessed. All our conversations revolved around the characters, and of course, that led us all to a lifelong appreciation of Jerry Yan. Although, truth be told, I much prefer the sensitive, quiet violin playing Hua Zilei, played by Zai Zai, Vic Chu's nickname. I remember soon after finishing the drama, I got a forwarded email from an old friend back home, and somehow I quickly reply all and wrote a long, verbose and utterly fangirling email about my deep love for Meteor Garden. I didn't realize that I had accidentally copied everyone into that email until I got a whole bunch of replies from random strangers telling me how amused they were that I could wax lyrically about a silly TV show. Well, I guess that was the beginning of a lifelong love affair with Asian dramas. Of course, drama watching wasn't as advanced and easy now as it was back in the day. I think the next drama I got to watch was my first K drama, Winter Sonata, when I was in London over Christmas break the next year. I was at my friend's place, and since nothing was open over Christmas, the few of us girls spent our Christmas watching Bae Yong Joon and his dreamy glasses and obsessing with how he tied his scarf. That's like two stories, but I guess that it had in common is how much fun I had watching dramas with my friends. For the most part, drama watching is pretty solitary for me, much like reading, as most of my friends don't watch Asian dramas. So discovering a whole group of like-minded people in Discord has made it so much fun again. Oh, that's so sweet. I'm so glad you were able to find that in Discord again, Stardust. I really, really am. And also, can I just say, I love this beginning story. The fact that you were able to watch Meteor Garden with, a group of, friends, and the fact that you would look at each other and it's just like, let's just do, it's the whole one more episode, but you're among other people. I feel like that's so much fun. So thank you so much for sharing your story. Next up, we have Hillary. That she said, so my story into Drama Land. I started to watch regularly since 2021, but I watched my first Korean drama in middle school. It was The Jewel in the Palace. My first C drama was The Imperial Coroner. I discovered your podcast 3 months ago. I was searching more C dramas and K drama podcasts, and I came across yours. I really enjoyed listening to your opinions. Thank you for your work and for always posting more and more episodes. To date, I watched 96 C dramas and 130 K dramas. Thank you so much. I'm glad you found the podcast and that you enjoy it. It is a joy. It's honestly a joy when somebody just says, do you know what? I actually really enjoyed listening to your podcast. Because I think because I am not all the time, because obviously we have the drama trio and I have a bunch of guests coming on, but a lot of the episodes that I do are just by myself, and you can kind of forget sometimes that you're talking to people out there, if that makes sense. It's a little bit bizarre. So when people come in and they say, I really enjoy your podcast episodes, it's just a little reassurance that people out there are listening and they're actually liking what you're producing, which is a lot of fun. Because at the end of the day, yes, I do this because I love chatting Asian dramas, but I also really love when other people, enjoy what I'm putting out there. So thank you so much for sharing, Hillary. Next up, we have Amanda. My story, my good friend had started listening to BTS at first. She was so excited, so I thought to see what the fuss was about. And yes, I got it. This was June 2019. Then she said she's watching K dramas, and I was like, why would you even do that? She raved how good they are and so much better than other dramas. Beginning of lockdown, she got sick and she lives on her own. After she recovered, was about March 2020, I said I would go keep her company. And she was watching the end of Healer, and she wanted to watch My ID is Gangnam Beauty, I believe. I was like, okay, you're sick, we'll watch it. And yes, I got sucked right after that. After that, I watched Healer. We both wanted to watch Secretary Kim, but couldn't find it. When I googled it, it said it was on Viki, so we downloaded. Then it was free with adverts. It was, believe it or not, guys. At one point, this won't be like to everybody, but at one point Viki was free with ads, and now you can't really, there's no free tier on Viki anymore. It was free with adverts. So funny. Every advert was Under Armour. Gave it 2 weeks and I caved and paid to get rid of ads. Where I see Under Armour now, I think of my drama journey. That's actually really cute. So that's how it began. We both said we wouldn't watch one that's just airing, and yet that didn't last. My first Chinese drama was Meteor Garden. It was harder to get used to change of language, but now I would say Chinese dramas are my go-to, and I don't watch any English dramas. I think that becomes kind of, everybody's go-to is the fact that we don't watch, we end up not watching any English TV, and Asian dramas tend to go our go-to. I think that's, so accurate. So thank you so much for sharing, Amanda. Next up, we have H, and they say it was in 2020 when I had online classes and pretty much nothing else to do. So I clicked play on Crash Landing on You. Because the premise seemed cool, I loved it. And after that, I just started watching other K dramas. Hometown Cha 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 was the drama that influenced me to start watching dramas week by week. I love how K dramas more and more every year. I like the variety of narratives and characters that are introduced in K dramas. Some of my favorite dramas are Youth of May, Hospital Playlist, and Hi Bye Mama. For C dramas, Road Home was the one that stole my heart. I discovered it while I was recovering from surgery, and I enjoyed the cinematography a lot. But it wasn't until When I Fly Towards You and Hidden Love that I decided to watch C dramas more regularly. I love modern C dramas a lot, especially the ones that focus on women's journey through life. Historicals are sometimes a hit or miss for me. When it comes to J dramas or Thai dramas, I usually stumble upon edits on TikTok, and that's how I end up watching them. I love J dramas that focus on life and friendship, like Brush Up Life or Influence. I also love the trope of fake marriage. Shanghai Marriage Honey is a good example of this trope. All in all, Asian dramas have provided me with a very different yet beautiful perspective on the world, life, and relationships in general. I get to have fun while watching them, I get to have a good cry, and I get to know Asian culture and history, and I'm really grateful for that. That's so true. We learn a lot, even though some of it might not be accurate. I do think we get a sense of culture from watching these dramas, and it's cultures that are so different to us. And for me, for example, I would have never really interacted with these cultures unless I watched Asian dramas. So I'm just very glad that I get to do that. So thank you for sharing. Next up is Bar, and they've said I started watching Asian dramas by accident. It was because of COVID. My aunt was in town, and we ended up watching Cinderella and the Five Knights, Korean drama. And it was so freaking cute, and we were obsessed with the story. Fast forward a year, I rewatched that same drama, and Netflix recommended Meteor Garden to me. And that was the first Chinese drama I watched. After watching it, I was obsessed with Wang Hedi, Shen Yu, and Darren Chen. So I watched their adjacent dramas. My timing was perfect because Love Between Fairy and Devil had just come out around that time, and I've been hooked ever since. I actually started learning Chinese last year, and I just passed passed the HSK3 level test. Oh my god, well done. That is dedication. Uh, I need to learn from this dedication, guys, because I've been slacking. uh, Test. I hope to use it in the international business, so the dramas are now assisting my language learning a lot. It also helps to no longer need subtitles. That is amazing that you've been able to learn it so well. Congrats on that for sure. So next up, so that's all the listeners' stories. Now, I reached out to finish up the episode. I reached out to a couple of fellow content creators, and they aren't just content creators to me. They are people who have become very good friends of mine, and they've guested on Tea and Soju, whether that be in season 1 or season 2, and they've become long, standing. They've always got an open door for Tea and Soju for sure, for guesting. And, they've helped shape Tea and Soju into what it is by being guests. So I reached out to a couple of people, and I asked them, would you mind sharing your story, with us for Tea and Soju? So these are the, fellow podcasters, content creators to me. They are truly just friends and their stories. First up, we have Becky. Now, Becky would have been on quite a few episodes by this point. She was in the Drama Exchange. She did a Midday Snowstorm of Love with me. So she also now has her own podcast called Drama Detours. Go and check that out. So her story goes. I first got into Asian dramas one random night as I was scrolling, and the plot of one show I saw looked more interesting than all the others. When I clicked on it, I was surprised it wasn't in English, but Korean. But I am used to subs on animes, so it was not a problem. I ended up really enjoying the pacing and acting and wanted to check out more. Eventually, the more I watched, the more excited I was to watch more and learn more about the different cultures in different dramas. I started watching Chinese dramas and Japanese dramas and even Thai and Taiwanese dramas. And with the more I watched, I started to have favorite actors and actresses whose upcoming projects I was excited to check out. I just love how the storytelling in all these dramas are so much more unique than American shows, and the emotions put into each one really stuck with me. Eventually, I had become addicted to seeing what plot and storyline they can come up with next, and I absolutely loved talking about them with others who were as passionate as me. So that's when I started my drama TikTok account, and from there, I have been having a wonderful time chatting and making friends who are also as passionate about these shows as me. The drama community is so lovely, and I am so grateful to have found this hobby that ended up being so much more to me. It's true. I have always said this, guys, but whenever you start into this content creating business, not business, but when you start talking about dramas, whether that be a podcast, whether that be a TikTok account, whatever it may be, one of the best things that pretty much trumps everything is the community that you find. It's such a lovely community. And yes, you find duds out there, like there's some corners of it that isn't as nice, but overall, it's such a lovely, supporting community to be a part of, and you can truly make some really, really good friends. I would definitely go and follow Becky. She's a crazy talented person. Not only are her edits so good, but she's a cosplayer, and I just have a lot of fun with her. So definitely go and check Becky out on her socials and her podcast. So next up we have Pam. Now Pam guested in the episode where we reviewed The Double together. So, I wanted to get her story, and she wrote, "So I started watching Asian dramas because my friend introduced me to them. As a Brazilian living in Germany, I really missed watching telenovelas. And yes, guys, like Portuguese and Brazilians have this in common. We adore a good old telenovela. In fact, a lot of the telenovelas we get in Portugal are from Brazil, and there's a whole channel that just airs Brazilian telenovelas. They are wild, but also so good. That's a whole aside. So she then goes on to say, "This was close enough for me. I think the first Asian drama I watched was Extraordinary You and then Boys Over Flowers. But even as a kid, I loved watching Asian fantasy or martial arts movies. Of course, after I started with K dramas, I found other Asian dramas. The next genre that got me hooked was Thai BL's Boy Love series. That's also how I started making content to talk about dramas. I realized it's so much more fun to talk to people about the dramas than just watch them and never mention them again. And now I'm really obsessed with all kinds of Asian dramas, especially C dramas. They're my go to dramas whenever I'm in the mood to watch something. I'm glad I started my drama journey because I got to meet and talk to so many incredible people. I hope more people get to experience how amazing the dramas and the community are." Like you said, it is absolutely a running theme. The community truly is amazing. And I think it makes everything so good. I think when you get to talk to friends, because that's what people become. Yes, they're online friends. You may have never met people in real life. You may never meet these people in real life, but I feel like you truly get this connection. And talking about dramas is just so much fun. And I think that's something that actually thinking about it, I never really got with American shows or, Western TV. Yes, there's that community there, but it's not as predominant as like the Asian drama community, at least that I've seen. Or maybe I'm just way, way more, way deeper into this community than I ever was into the Western shows community, but that is a lot of fun. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Pam. Funnily enough, another funny story. Pam and I did not really realize that we both spoke Portuguese for the longest time. I didn't realize she was Brazilian. This happened with Tanya as well. Didn't realize she was Portuguese, and I'm like, this is crazy that we get to find each other through, these Asian dramas. So yeah, that's just a little aside. So next up we have the lovely Naz. Now Naz is honestly one of the nicest people you would ever meet. She's so sweet, and I've recorded with her a couple of times. She's come on Tea and Soju. I've gone on her podcast, The Swoon Diaries. I highly recommend giving her a follow. She's so nice and so sweet, and I love listening to her. She has this very soothing voice as well, so check her out. And she has wrote, "I started watching K-dramas in September 2020 during the pandemic. I was not interested in the most popular shows in the US at the time, and I was a lover of Hallmark movies. This is Us and dating shows. I asked my former supervisor, who is Korean, if she watched K-dramas because they always popped up for me on Netflix, and I was curious. She said no, but her best friend did, and she would ask for X. She came back and said her friend recommended Romance is a Bonus Book and Chloe. I started Romance is a Bonus Book and I never looked back. The storytelling and the sweetness of the show was so refreshing, and it was just what I was looking for." So that's Naz's story. Like I said, she hosts the Swoon Diaries podcast, and I highly recommend you guys go and check it out. I had so much fun, recording with her, and we did oh my goodness, what is the name of that drama? Is it Revenge Marriage? No, it's not Revenge Marriage. It's the one that everybody went crazy for last year, and it's very McJangy, but it's also very, very good. I cannot remember the name, but we had a lot of fun recording that. So that's Naz' story. And then to wrap this episode up, I could not do this episode without putting these two people in, and they have honestly, I record with them a lot. So, whether it be for my podcast, whether it be for Jess's podcast, whether it'll eventually be for Caitlin's podcast, who knows? But I do, I don't even know how we started recording. I think it was because Jess and I think Jess kind of reached out to do The Untamed as an episode, and then we did everything else but The Untamed in between. And I think we recorded Till the End of the Moon, the three of us together, over on the day back. And after that, we just kind of started talking, the three of us, and we have so much fun together. And then when I came to do season 2, I really, really wanted to add some co-hosts, in the sense that I wanted to have two other people that would do episodes with me, but it wouldn't be, every single episode. It would be because that's a lot to ask. And also, guys, we live in very different time zones. We have worked out a really good time that works for the three of us. But we live in very different time zones. So it would be very, very time consuming and very difficult and a big ask of somebody to sort of commit that. So I sort of reached out to them and I was like, and by this point, we'd been talking for a long while, and we'd sort of, I think, become way more than just not co-hosts, but fellow people that knew each other. We've become, really good friends, and I sort of said, "Would you guys be up for forming a little trio for tea and soju where we would do one episode a month together?" And, we'd have a different logo for that. And Jess did our logo at the time for the drama trio. So you guys know when it's a drama trio episode, it tends to be the drama trio, logo as opposed to the tea and soju, logo. But when I tell you guys get a little, snap of what our conversations are like and whatnot. But honestly, we have the best time together. It's honestly, when I plan to record with these two girls, I swear I make no other plans for my day, because especially if we haven't recorded for a little while, we can literally be chatting for 4 or 5 hours straight and we don't even realize it's happened. So they have become such a great addition to Tea and Soju, and I look forward to recording with them so much. So that is Caitlin and Jess, and that's who we're going to wrap up the episode with. So first up, we have Caitlin's story, and she has written, in 2008, I discovered Asian dramas. I was bored one day and came across Boys Over Flowers, chopped up into 5-minute chunks on YouTube. That is dedication. Someone had graciously made a long playlist for the entire K-drama, and I binged it all. From there, I watched what I could find and get my hands on, which wasn't much, and it wasn't easy back then. This is when I also found K-pop through OSTs. I didn't start to consistently watch Asian dramas until 2017 because I had access to more stuff. I started my drama watching in 2008, watching what I could find. Some years I couldn't access anything, so there were periods of time where I watched no Asian dramas. Since 2017, I had access to Drama Fever and Netflix and Viki. The rest is history. I started watching K-dramas and slowly dove into other Asian dramas such as C-dramas. Now I watch anything and everything. Try anything once, right? My favorite genres are still crime and thriller. Of course, everyone knows that. I started the blog in 2020 and the pandemic as a pandemic project, and here we are today with a blog and now a podcast, which I started in 2024. So Caitlin is the host of the podcast No Sleep for Dramas, and that's the number 4. And she also has her blog, and she also is part of the drama trio. So she's 1/3 of the drama trio over on Tea and Soju, and she is such a great addition because honestly, like I said, she is, like she said, she is very much a crime and thriller. She will watch, other genres as well, which makes it great. But it's always a lot of fun because can give suggestions to things that I would have never thought to check out. So I really, really enjoy that. So thank you so much, Caitlin. And then lastly, we have Jess. Now, Jess is the host of the Debug K Rambles podcast. If you want really good, Jess has such good wording, and she has such a good way to explain things. I really just enjoy listening to Jess talk a lot of the time. She's so gracious on her podcast, and in fact, she's just so much fun. She comes up with the best one-liners. She's very creative, so I always have a lot of fun with Jess as well. So her story reads: my journey into Asian dramas begins in 2011 or 2012. I use these years interchangeably just because of of my own crap memory. I was living back home after college and I found that I had all this free time. I had no tests to study for, no papers to write, no classes to attend. I would come home from work and be like, what now? The summer I started watching K dramas, this is the chain of events. I started by binging True Blood. we've we've talked about this on one of our episodes, and it's like True Blood. Jess refers it as her fever dream. She doesn't quite remember what happened. So she says, I started by binging True Blood, that hypersexualized vampire show on HBO. Then I watched the French movie Heartbreakers and the BBC Robin Hood show before Netflix suggested I watch the movie A Moment to Remember, the 2004 melodrama starring Son Ye Jin and Jung Woo Song. It was strange and ridiculously sad, and I loved it. Back then, you could rate movies and shows out of 5 stars on Netflix, which gave you really good suggestions from their algorithm. And after I rated that movie high, Netflix suggested I watch my first K drama, Lie to Me, a 2011 drama starring Yoon Eun Hai and Kang Ji Hwan. I loved it, and soon after that, I watched Boys Over Flowers, which was strange and vile and addictive and tropey and toxic, and that was it. The rest is history. So that's Jess's story. Like I said, both Jess and Caitlin and I, guys, our Instagram chat is just a lot of fun and we support each other a lot as well. So I could not ask for better co hosts than the two of them. And they've honestly made season 2 even more special than season 1 to me. I find that for me, season 2 of Tea and Soju has brought out a lot more. I've had a lot more guests, and you know, as I've been recording it, my tastes in dramas have been changing as well. So I've found that I can spot that in the content that I'm creating for Tea and Soju. But I've loved it every step of the way. I'm, not planning on quitting anytime soon. So let's put it that way. So that is it. That is everybody's stories. I've loved doing this episode because I love getting an insight into the listeners as well. I feel that just makes it so much more special. Thank you everybody for sending in your stories and for being part of this, celebratory episode. I am so, so happy that Tea and Soju has been able to become this thing that is so much bigger than I had anticipated. I just thought I was going to sit down and talk about a couple of things for Chinese dramas, and maybe 1 or 2 people would listen and that would be it. And now we have a really nice community, not only on Instagram where you guys reach out to me, but especially on places like Discord, where even if I'm not involved in the conversations, people are having such good conversations on there about everything and anything, about travel and, about dramas, and just to have that safe spot. That's what I wanted Tea and Soju to become. And it's been such a joy and pleasure to see it come true. I don't think, 2 years ago I could have imagined where I would be now. And I'm just so appreciative of every single one of you out there who listens and who supports the podcast. So thank you so much, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I have, and I shall catch you next time. Bye.